Computer here.
Good morning, Director of Advocacy and Communications for the Urban League of Philadelphia. We're excited to have you join us this morning as we continue in our focus on education funding for our students across the Commonwealth. Just some quick housekeeping. We do have, this is an open press event, so we do have the potential for media to be present today. So just be prepared with your comments to know that point. In addition, we will be recording this and we will be putting this on social media under the PA Schoolworks page. We encourage you to follow PA Schoolworks. We also encourage you to follow PCCY and the Urban League of Philadelphia. Finally, the hashtag for today's session is Fund PA Schools, which we will put in the chat. Make sure as you are tweeting or posting on Facebook related to this event that you are using the hashtag Fund PA Schools. So at this time, I want to thank all the speakers for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you all taking time to support us in this initiative, and more importantly, to stress the importance of funding our schools. We want to thank State Senator Vincent Hughes. We want to thank Philadelphia City Council member Shirelle Parker. We want to thank U.S. Congresswoman Madeline Dean. And we also want to thank State Senator Lindsey Williams. We also want to thank our student speaker for joining us this morning. And you are in for a great treat. We appreciate Samaya Smalley for joining us. And we also want to thank all the presenters from the PCCY Education Law Center, the Urban League, all the breakout hosts, and everyone that was involved with planning this event. So at this time, we will turn it over to Andrea Custis, President and CEO of the Urban League of Philadelphia.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for getting up this morning on a beautiful day. I'm quite sure many people need some of that vitamin D, but yet you chose to be with us today. And we are very thankful for that, and we don't take that for granted. As Thomas said, I have the pleasure and honor of leading the Urban League of Philadelphia. For those of you who don't know us, we are a 104-year-old civil rights organization. Our mission is advocacy, which for us equates to social justice and economic empowerment. And we do that through 5 direct services. We are in the school system with Dr. Height. We see about 3,000 students a year. We have a workforce center. So for us, it's jobs, jobs, jobs. That's the way you lift people out of poverty. We have a housing department where we help people to purchase a home for the first time. We also intervene for them in court. Right now, there's a moratorium on renter eviction and mortgage default. We also have an entrepreneurship center where we help individuals start a business or grow a business. And then we are very active in leading and advocating for health and wellness. So with all of that, it's my pleasure for a moment to talk about the Pennsylvania Schoolworks. I want to let you know that the Urban League is a member of the Pennsylvania Schoolworks and has been so for years. It is a statewide coalition that represents teachers, educators, parents, communities, and we all have something in common. We are advocating for the proper resources, the proper funding for our students across the Commonwealth. So we are all together as a statewide coalition that represents urban areas, rural areas, and suburban areas. We are all suffering and being challenged by some of the exact same issues. I used to live in Lancaster. Whether you are in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or you are in Philadelphia, or you are in Reading, we are all experiencing these challenges. What I so much enjoy about working with the coalition is that we tackle problems from like its entirety. We don't take a piece of it, and that makes it challenging for us at times, but it really does help solve big issues. And we all have the common value, as I said, about equity when it comes to funding and resources. I want to show my appreciation for all the individuals that are on this Zoom. You have so many dedicated individuals here that are, their work is tireless and what they do for their communities, what they do for their school systems, and we so appreciate that. There's not one organization who could do this by themselves. We work as a group together, as a coalition. I don't have to tell you that the COVID pandemic really, when I look at it, and I'll look at it analogous for a moment, in the Black community, we had a health pandemic, but in addition to that, it highlighted the economic pandemic, right? And so when you look at that, I see the same analogy here with the work that we did. You know, you had the COVID pandemic, but on top of that, you had a pandemic that said, here's a 1-2 for you. And one is that we did not have the money that was coming in terms of local taxes and local revenues, right? We didn't have that. You know, when you look at the revenue, just think about just the Commonwealth and how much we lost in revenues. I mean, I'll just look at Philadelphia. Think about all of the money that we didn't get for those that are properly working from home, but none of that revenue is coming into the city of Philadelphia. And it's the same thing across the Commonwealth. And then on top of it, while you had revenues down, you had costs going up because, as you know, it takes more money. And we had to do other things to keep our students safe, to do a hybrid model in order to do remote learning. And we also know that for some of our students, remote learning did not work for many of them, right? And so that costs more money, and many of our students are behind. In fact, we're running a program this summer that's going to focus on academics and STEM and some other things and try to put a little bit of fun, but we really need to make up that time. In addition to that, just a final comment. I really appreciate what the federal government has done in terms of injecting funds into education. I appreciate that. But I think all of us feel that is not the end all. We have a long-term view and we need funding in terms of long-term, 5 years or more. We need a plan. The governor has set forth that, but we also know as a coalition, one shot is not going to do it. So we will be continually advocating for a long-term look for our students in order for them to have the resources and the funding that all students with no regard to our zip codes here in the Commonwealth have everything that they need to be successful, everything that they need to work to their full potential. So with that, I would like to turn it over to State Senator Vincent Hughes, who is by no means a stranger, but I would say one of the best leaders in the Commonwealth, excuse me, always fighting for the resources and for the funding for our children, for our students. So if Senator Hughes is on, I'd like to turn it over to you, Senator Hughes.
Thanks, Andrea. Good to see you this morning. Good to talk to you. Thanks for responding to my text earlier this morning. Appreciate that. You know me, always another thing to get done. Just want to say what's up to the family. Thanks. Good to see everybody. Y'all must be committed because it's 90 degrees outside and the sun is shining brightly and you all could be doing something else much more fun than having this conversation. But I guarantee you, what we're talking about here is more important than probably just about anything any one of us could be doing right now. All of you, like in the church, it's like it's preaching, but all of you are really in many respects the choir, okay? You know the song, you know the key, you know the tune, you know the refrain. You sung it a million times before, but now is the opportunity, maybe more than we've had in such a long time, to really convert the unconverted. And what I mean by that, I cannot escape the fact that we're having this conversation 6 days after recognizing May 17th, which is the anniversary of the decision for Brown versus Board of Education, and that dream that was, we hope would have been achieved through that decision on May 17th, 1954, still has not been achieved. And so we can't escape the moment that we're in right now. And so not escaping the moment means we have to rush to the moment. Andrea Custis has said very clearly what the problem is. Just kind of talked about what the broad issues are. You're some really smart people. I'm being bookended by all the smart people, Andrea, and then the folks behind me who are going to talk to you in greater detail. The lawyers, the educators, the family members going to talk to you in great detail about what all of this means. What my job in this conversation is to make sure that you understand exactly the moment that you're in right now. You are in a moment of opportunity on this fight. You're in a moment of opportunity on this fight. And what I mean by that, Andrea talked about the federal government driving dollars through the American Rescue Plan and other kinds of initiatives to try to help regular folks in all situations. But the federal government has been very pointed in terms of trying to make sure that there's dollars going to education, because we've seen the devastation that has occurred in our schools at every grade level, and so the federal government has been very helpful. But what the federal government has done through the American Rescue Plan is given the state of Pennsylvania about $7.3 billion, which we now have the opportunity to decide how that money gets spent. Fortunately, we've got a thoughtful governor who's got his priorities on straight. Governor Wolf has got his focus on the right things, but you know we got to struggle in the legislature. When you advocate with our colleagues, be that Democrat or Republican, when you advocate with our colleagues about this issue, what I want you to make sure that they do not use the excuse that they have used in years past, that there is no money. There is money. And it's not just a little bit of money. There is a lot of money available to deal with righting this ship that has been wrong for generations, if not centuries. There is money available. I talked to you about the discretionary dollars that the state will have the responsibility of determining through the American Rescue Plan. It's about $7.3 billion. And that money should be utilized to fix up broken and toxic schools. All right, we cannot have school buildings where it is toxic to go into a classroom, where you've got lead and asbestos and broken facilities and infestation and all kinds of things going on. That's not the kind of school that every one of our students should be in, or any of our students should be in. We've got money to be able to address that. I want you to understand that. We've got money also in addition to the American Rescue Plan dollars. We have money in budget surpluses in Harrisburg. Right now, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is running $1 billion over the projections where we were right now. What does that mean? We're running at an extra $1 billion of surplus. And that is growing. That dollar figure is growing day by day. And so what I want you to understand, to everybody here, to the choir members who are part of this conversation, all right? To the choir members who are part of this conversation, I want you to understand that that no legislator or senator, when you go to them and advocate to them, none of them can say to you with a straight or honest face that there is no money to address this issue. None of them can say that to you and be honest. None of them can say that to you and be honest. We have the American Rescue Plan dollars that we've got to decide how they get spent. And we have a growing budget surplus. And somebody put a question, I think ML put a question in the chat. What does that mean? What do you mean, Senator, when you talk about surplus? Well, what that means is this. The state projected that it was going to get X amount of dollars in tax revenues during the course of a year. This was the figure. That was the projection. And so the governor's budget proposal was based on that projection. What has happened is that the revenues are coming in higher than that projection. So the higher is at least $1 billion higher than the projection. So what does that mean? That means you now have an extra $1 billion that needs to be spent on priorities in the Commonwealth. And what we believe, and what I believe the folks on this, the choir that's on this Zoom conversation right now, believes that that $1 million should be prioritized to dealing with the education of our children. So you have that surplus there, plus you have American Rescue Plan dollars. So what am I saying to you folks? Again, I don't want to drive home this message. And I hate to be so repetitive, but the reality is the reality. The money is there to deal with this issue. The money is there to deal with this issue. No legislator, no senator, not even the governor can say there's no money there for this. Now, I think the governor's in the right place. I think he's heard from Tamia and Deb and Andrea and a whole bunch of other people so much that I think he's in the right place. But we got to make sure our colleagues understand this as well. Also, just as a side note, when the governor back in February made his proposal about dealing with this, he called for a tax increase. All right? That is no longer necessary because of the surpluses that are coming in. All right? So don't let any of our colleagues say to you, well, you know, we got to raise taxes to fund it. No, you don't. The money is there. So I need you to understand, folks, that the mission that you're on is achievable. It's right within our grasp right now. I represent a district, the 7th Senatorial District, which is one of the greatest districts in the Senate of Pennsylvania. And I also have in that district the tale of two worlds. Long story short, I have, of course, the Philadelphia School District. I have the Colonial School District, which has great schools like Plymouth Whitemarsh High School. I have the Upper Dublin School District, which has some great schools as well. But I also have, as I said, Philadelphia, and I want you to understand this, that Overbrook High School, the great Overbrook High School, the home of Will Smith and Will Chamberlain and Guy Bluford, the first African-American astronaut, sits 4.8 miles away from Lower Merion High School. And Lower Merion High School has created some fantastic people, all right? Probably the most notable is Kobe Bryant. But that 4.8 miles is almost like 4,000 miles in terms of what's happening at Lower Merion and what's happening in the Philadelphia in Overbrook High School. They spend about $10,000 more per student in Lower Merion High School than they spend in Philadelphia, in Overbrook High School. So just imagine a classroom of 30 and understand that 30 times 10,000, that's what, $300,000 more being spent in that classroom for their services. State-of-the-art technology, state-of-the-art resources in Lower Merion, but when you go to Overbrook High School, the textbook, the science textbook was written in 1998. That's the deal what we're dealing with. And I submit to you that the solution to all of the problems that we are confronting with lies locked up in the brains of so many young people who are learning at a disadvantage because they don't have the resources to help them free their genius and allow their brilliance to be exhibited to the world. So put the pressure on, folks. We all lose in this circumstance. We all lose in this conversation when we don't do it correctly, when we don't fund appropriately. Don't give up. Keep fighting. Keep the pressure on. Say to our legislators right now, now is the time. All this is going to be wrapped up by the end of June, by June 30th. And that's what, 5 weeks away. All of this is going to be wrapped up. So engage with your legislator and your senator and with the governor now. Social media, emails, phone calls, text messages, whatever you got to do, get it out there. We can win this fight in honor of May 17th, in honor of Brown versus the Board of Education, in honor of these children who have been suffering for far too long with a lack of resources. Let's win the fight. It's on us, folks. It's on us. But I believe we can do it. I believe we can get it done. So Andrea, I can preach this sermon for a long time, Andrea, but I'm gonna jump off here.
You
all
got
right?
me revved up this morning. I'm revved up. I've got to call to action. We are real clear. You got $7.3 billion in there from the American Rescue Plan. And in addition to that, most of the people I'm looking at the chat did not understand what Senator Hughes just said about the $1 billion surplus. They were like, what? I've never heard that. So thank you for teaching those individuals. And we're ready to go. We've got our call to action. If there was ever a time, the time is now. I don't know if I'll live and see another time that's going on right now from the federal government. I'm not sure. I've not seen it up to this point, and I'm not sure I'll see that. So the time is now. We got it, Senator Hughes. We got it. We're going to make this happen. Okay, with that, I'm going to bring on exactly who we're talking about, Samaya, who is a senior at Central High School. So Samaya, thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, Miss Andrea. I'm Samaya Smalley. I'm a senior at Central High School, and I'm here on behalf of PA Youth Vote, which is an organization led by students and helped with teachers. And we really care about engaging our youth in Philadelphia civically and empowering them with the power to register to vote and to vote at the polls in every election. So a little bit about me, I got involved around 2 years ago. I joined my school's voter registration team. And basically it's our job to register seniors, whether we see them in the halls and homerooms. We try to register at least 90% every single year and provide them with the tools and education that they need to be able to get to the polls and to make their voices heard and help them understand why it's important. So I joined that in my sophomore year. And ever since then, I've kind of been on a journey of understanding how registering to vote is so important, but not just that, how engaging our youth in Philly is important and how it impacts the future, because we've had elections where we've had turnouts that haven't been that way in decades in regards to how people my age are coming out and how they're turning up to the polls. And I think this is directly linked with funding when it comes to education in our schools in this district, because when we have I've seen the difference in students and how they feel about education in their school when they're empowered to have the tools to engage in their communities and make changes versus when they're not, because I've had so many conversations with my peers asking them what they care about and how they feel they can change it and why maybe they don't see a change happening. And they basically told me that they feel like nothing happens. They don't feel like they have the materials. They don't have the education that they need. And I've seen how it causes such a huge disparity, in our district and with kids my age and students of color specifically, and just so many groups. And I've been educated on how other schools have larger funding because they're outside of the district and how they're provided materials so that their students are 18 and they're registered to vote and they're out at the polls. And not only that, but they're engaging in their civic duties and they understand who's running for what, and they just are able to engage like every student should be able to. And their everyday life as a Philadelphia citizen. And I feel like many other feel that that's not equity, that's not equitous, because every student, no matter what district you're a part of, should have the equal opportunity to express themselves and to feel empowered to make change in their communities. So that's, in my opinion, how civic education and funding is directly linked together. And I've had a lot of conversations with teachers, students, and advocates who see this direct correlation and who agree with me that Philadelphia students are just as important as students anywhere else, and we have the same opinions and we have the same fight and drive to want to make change in our communities and to want to grow and help our communities. It's just our schools sometimes aren't as funded as others, so we don't feel as empowered, or we aren't educated on how we can invest in our community and how our community should be investing in us. So I feel that it's really important that we start getting the treatment that we deserve as students, because we work just as hard as any other district students, and we shouldn't have to be held back or reserved or not have the same opportunities as others who probably have had a chance to formulate their own opinions and express their creativity and express everything that they can express to become, fully educated adolescents. And we should have the same opportunities, because me at my school, we're not as funded as other schools, and we had to fight to get a director of inclusivity and to fight to get positions that help to make our school a better community. And it was a long fight and a hard fight that students had to commit to, and it shouldn't. I don't want to see other students have to go through that. I want to see every district being fully equipped with what they need so that students can have access to the same education and the same materials and tools that they may have in a district that's 5 miles away, which isn't fair. 5 miles shouldn't be enough space to create such a large gap in civic education and power and tools. So that's just a little bit about me and why I think this is really important, and that's what I care about. So thank you.
Samaya, I'm going to try to be a big girl and not cry right now because you bring tears of joy to me. I am so proud of you. Please know every individual on here values you, values all students, and also values people that look like you. It is not fair. It is unjust that you don't have the same funding. Senator Hughes just said the same thing. And I can tell you, with every breath in my body and everybody else here, we're going to fight for this. We're going to make it happen. And because of all of your civic engagement, because of all the students like you who care and are out there and not just sitting there, blah, 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 but are out there working it and making things happen, you have our complete commitment that we will absolutely fight. As John said way back, we're going to get into good trouble, and we're going to continue to do what John Lewis said for us: speak up, speak out, and fight for the right thing. So thank you so much. I'm going to put a plug in now. When you finish doing what you're doing, come and work with us at the Urban League of Philadelphia. I have a position already waiting for you. I have another individual, Tamir, who graduated, and I ran into him. I said, I've got a position here for you. So Samaya, I'm signing up now to be your publicist and to get you to come work for the Urban League. You represent exactly what we want. So thank you so much. With that, let's move over now and get an update on some of the other education issues. We have three amazing people. They are the lifeline to Pennsylvania Schools Works. And we'll start with Tamia, then move to Deborah, and then followed by Thomas. So Tamia, may I turn it over to you now, please?
Sure. Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone who's spoken so far. We're so happy to have you here this morning to help us fight for education and equity for our students. I do have a really brief presentation for you, just to give you some background information for those of you who are new advocates, and for those of you who aren't, thank you for supporting the folks that are here who want to get involved. All right, so education funding is necessary to help our students achieve their dreams. Samaya so eloquently stated that with her passion that every student needs and should have the opportunities to succeed. That's not generally the case, although the Pennsylvania Constitution says that every student should have a thorough and efficient system of public education that in fact meets their needs. But in real life, there are ways that school districts are funded that don't meet the needs of students. On average, about 58% of the way that we fund our schools is local taxes. 34% comes from the state. In any other regular year, about 3% comes from federal government, and then the rest is made up from various sources. And it contributes to an equitable system as to how we fund our schools here in the state. In 2015-2016, a fair funding formula was passed. This funding formula looked at the way that we fund our schools differently than we had in the past. It looked at how many students were in a district, if students were in poverty, if students were in deep poverty, if they were English language learners, concentration of poverty and charter school enrollments. So there was this great funding formula that was put into place in order to address some of those inequities, to give school districts more funding that aligned with the needs of their student population. And its basic education funding is the largest line item when it comes to how we fund schools at the state level, but not all of the funding actually goes through that fair funding formula. In fact, only about 11% of the funds do, which means about 89% of the funds go through to school districts in a way that existed prior to the formula being enacted, which means that a lot of times school districts do not actually get the level of funding that is aligned with the level of needs in their communities, like Samaya spoke to. What we're seeing, though, is because of this gap in how we are funding schools, there are a lot of costs associated with growth for school districts that the state funding doesn't cover. And just here, this is a snapshot in time from 2010 to 2017, where the costs that school districts had rose at 2.5 times the rate, or were 2.5 times higher than the rate of funding that the state actually helped to contribute to those school districts to offset the costs, meaning that school districts were struggling to make up the difference. And so you've heard today from Senator Hughes, from Andrea, and from Samaya about the need to change that, because it shouldn't be that the school districts that have the least ability to try to make up this difference are in fact the ones that have the students that have the highest need. So in order to make sure that every student does in fact have the tools they need, we've got to really look at how we're funding school districts consistently. Are we looking at them in a way that we're giving them funds that align with the needs of the students? We're clearly not. We're making good strides, making lots of progress. We are in a very unique and unprecedented situation where there's funding to fill in these gaps and fill in these losses. But if we don't take action consistently over the course of years to rectify how we're allocating that state level funding to students, we're going to find ourselves in the same situation. And, people who are kindergartners will be saying the same thing that Samaya is saying now. That's unacceptable. And we're in a position now that we haven't been in before to change it. School funding matters. Why? Because it improves outcomes. It gives the students resources and tools to change their lives and impact the community accordingly. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Andrea.
Tamia, thank you for the information. It's just very clear. Appreciate all the work that you do. Let me turn it over to Deborah. And I know Deborah is at her son's game, and yet she still said, I'm here and ready to go. So I think we'll see her in her car office. Deborah, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And my son's up to bat, but I'm focused here. So as Tamia explained, and as you all know, because you wouldn't have joined us otherwise, Our schools are inequitably and inadequately funded, and there are multiple solutions. But in order to get the legislature and those actually in charge of the allocation of dollars to do what they need to do to fund our schools, the Education Law Center, along with the Public Interest Law Center, you could go to the next slide, filed a lawsuit in 2014 against the state, saying, as Tomia pointed out, we have this education clause in our state constitution and you're not following it. And again, as we know from what our schools, what the experiences our children have in schools, that the General Assembly is not meeting its constitutional obligation to provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education. And so we're suing the state, and both under the education clause and equal protection provisions. You can go to the next slide. And we are suing the state again on behalf of school districts and parents and statewide organizations, including the NAACP Pennsylvania State Conference and the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools. The districts and the families we're representing represent rural, urban, suburban, all parts of the state Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because this impacts students across the state. Next slide. We are suing the leaders in this state whose responsibility it is to adequately and equitably fund our schools. Next slide. And what is the case about? We are asking the court to say this system of funding our schools is unconstitutional, and to order the legislature to cease using this inadequate funding scheme and to create and maintain a funding system that enables all of our students to meet state standards. It is true that we are seeing very important dollars come in from the feds. And I think it is also true that both the governor's proposal and with Senator Hughes's championing of it, we hope to see additional dollars for basic education funding and special education funding this year. But we need a systemic solution. So it's not up and down, up and down, up and down, but a commitment to adequately and equitably fund our schools with a system that makes sense to give our students what they need. Next slide. So it's been a long road since filing it in 2014, but as you know, it's been decades and decades of inadequate and equitable funding. So we're in it to win it. Lots of documents and depositions and expert reports and rebuttal reports and all of those fun lawyerly things. And now we are waiting for our trial. Will hopefully be in September. We had a couple of summary judgment motions because we filed the case so long ago. The other side said, "Oh, your case is moot because you, not your case, but a few of your families are mooted out because they've graduated since you filed the case." And in fact, the court said, no, this is a case of public importance. And these families stay in, they tell an important story. And so we were successful in those summary judgment motions, and the trial will be in September. We hope it will be safe enough that you can all join us in Harrisburg in the courtroom over the course of that trial, while we show that the way that the state funds our schools is inequitable, inadequate, and unconstitutional. Next slide. What will we show? Again, as you know, all of our students are impacted by this underfunding, inadequate and inequitable funding. And in fact, based on your race and your class, we see additional inadequate funding, additional impact of this. And so the districts receiving the most revenue are disproportionately white. The districts receiving the least revenue are disproportionately Black and Latinx. This impacts along race lines, also along class lines. And one study, in fact, found that the higher the concentration students of color, the less funding. And so this, again, so close to the 67th anniversary of Brown v. Board, we know how important this is and what this means for all of our students. Next slide. And so what will we show? We'll show that money matters, and that, what districts are able to do with that money matters, both in terms of income inputs and outputs, in terms of what happens as a result of funding our schools for our students. Makes a huge difference. And again, you know this if your student goes to a school that's underfunded, and you know this if your kid goes to a school that's adequately funded, what that means in terms of what your students can do. Next slide. And so one of our experts showed what is the adequacy gap. And it's at least, this is a conservative estimate using the state's own data, at least $4.6 billion. And that so many school districts, 86% don't have what they need just to be at adequacy. And so if you go to fundOurSchoolsPA.org, you will see, you can click on that map, find your district, and find out what that adequacy gap is for your district. You can keep on clicking. Next slide. If you keep clicking, yep, you'll see that's the adequacy gap of each of our plaintiff school districts, our petitioner school districts. That's per student. Multiply that by a classroom of 30 kids. Multiply that by the school district. These are huge gaps. Next slide. So finally, what can you do? Well, please sign up, go to fundourschoolspa.org so you can follow the lawsuit, and then find out what's happening, how you can stay involved, and PASchoolswork.org as well, because we don't have to wait for the court to decide. There are legislative solutions that the legislature can implement this budget season to make a difference for our students. Next slide. That's it. So if you have additional questions, here's my contact information. And again, the court case is one piece of the larger solution that we need to be focused on. The lawyers will be focused on the lawsuit, and we hope that you will all get involved as advocates. And also, again, the legislature doesn't need to wait for a court. So with that, I turn it over to Thomas, who will give you some more examples of what that legislature could do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Great. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Just give me a second so I could get the presentation up.
Deborah, good luck with the next game.
I think we just lost.
Um,
There's always the next one.
okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Shirelle. Once again, I serve as the Director of Advocacy and Communications for the Urban League of Philadelphia. As we heard earlier, there's so much that's happening around education, and we recognize that in Harrisburg, this fight is a difficult fight. And we know that the budget that Governor Wolf has proposed is a bold one, and we know that there is those that support it and those that are against it. However, we recognize that it's important for all legislators to understand all the options that are available to them in order to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our students. So a group of organizations, including the Urban League, have joined in this effort to level up our school funding. We recognize that every child in Pennsylvania deserves robust course choices, class size that allow for personalized support, and enough counselors and nurses to provide a safe learning environment. As you guys have heard, the problem, Pennsylvania ranks 44th in the nation in the share of funding for K-12 schools. We know that we need at least $4.6 billion of additional funds to meet the needs of our students. And we also know that students in the districts with the greatest needs are deeply shortchanged. So as we know, there's a generation of children that will be unprepared or not being prepared for the challenges and the demands of tomorrow because of our inability to fund our schools adequately. And unfortunately, we know that students living in poverty, students of color, students with disabilities, English language learners are all disproportionately affected due to the lack of funding that stems to the issues with our legislators. So we know that doing nothing is not an option. We know that at a current rate of increase in state educational funding, it will take decades or more for the most underfunded districts to have the resources necessary. We do see that there are other proposals out there, and we recognize that all these proposals have stiff competition, and as Senator Hughes has mentioned earlier, it requires all of us to get into this fight. We believe that the level up supplement is an opportunity to address this issue. So what has been proposed and what individuals have been pushing, as you may be aware, PA Bill 1167 is a supplement fund that provides additional funding to the 20% of districts that have the fewest resources. We believe that will be over close to 100 identified districts that would follow that. And what we are proposing is not a cut in anyone's funding, but along with funding our 500 school districts, according to the formula, that we allocate additional funds to the most underfunded school districts to ensure that we're leveling up those school districts to meet the levels of some of the more prosperous school districts. And as we mentioned, this funding would be separate from and additional to the regular funding that all schools receive. This map highlights where some of the districts that exist, some of the districts that would benefit from a level up fund. Rural, suburban, urban, you see throughout. And we recognize, and we know through this data that at least every state senator in our Commonwealth has a district that would benefit from our level up fund.
Just put the screen back up.
So these are some of the organizations that are part of this fight. So as we mentioned, HB 1167 is currently a bill in Harrisburg. And we encourage you all to contact your legislators to support the bill, to let them know that this is an additional option that's out there as part of the fight. We do not want our legislators to think that there are not organizations like us and individuals like you who recognize the importance of this issue, and more importantly, who recognize that we need to fund our schools. There's ways for you to be involved. You can see at the bottom some of our social media handles to follow us on social media, to share this message with your network. You want to inform your classmates, inform school board members, inform everyone that if you are in one of these districts, that they should level up, that they should be fighting to level up their districts. And this is our website that you can learn more about our organization and the work that we're doing. In addition, you can, we have a tool there where you can easily contact your legislator to let them know that they need to level up in this fight for more funding for our schools.
Thank you, Thomas. And again, a special thank you to Mia, to Deborah, and to Thomas for the quick updates. We appreciate that. So now I have the pleasure, and I'm so excited, to introduce my soror, Councilwoman Shirelle Parker, who is certainly a champion and certainly leads and advocates for our children throughout the Commonwealth, especially here in Philadelphia, and understands these issues and fights every day to advocate for fair funding so that we have the resources that we need in order for our children to work to their full potential. With that, Councilwoman Shirelle Parker. Thank you for being here.
Sora, see you.
Oh, wait, we just.
Did you lose me?
Yep, can you start over? Thank you.
Did you all lose me?
No, I
Nope.
still see you. We're good.
And can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, now listen. This is a test on the quality of Wi-Fi in public.
Uh-oh, we're losing you.
Oh gosh.
No, go ahead.
I'm at the Finley Recreation Center at Upsall Street at Mansfield with the Mount Airy Baseball League today.
I know them well. I know them well.
And we are here for an event, so I had to be here. So I'm trying to do a couple of things at once. But listen to this. I want to say to all of the parents and the students who are here today, there is nothing more important that we should be doing than continuing to advocate for equitable funding for public education in our great Commonwealth and the city of Philadelphia. So with that being said, I want to say to the parents, I want to say to PCCY, to the Urban League, and all of those who are connected to the PA schools work campaign, I need you to not get weary. Shirelle Parker, you are a former legislator. You spent 10 years in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. You know what it's like to have to work in a highly charged, a highly partisan environment. And you were able to get some things done to support public education. What is it that you think we need to be doing now? One of our greatest tools is to find a way to build alliances with advocates who are like-minded in both rural and suburban Pennsylvania, because we are not alone in this battle. As we draw closer to schools reopening and we remain prayerful for the end of this pandemic, I know that many of you are familiar with the saying that we've got to strike while the iron's hot. Well, with the funding that President Biden is talking about in his American Rescue Plan, and listen, it promises to deliver. It is safe to say that the iron is hot as it has ever been. It is your advocacy, the parents, but also the students, that is crucial to ensuring that school districts like ours here in the city of Philadelphia that have traditionally been underfunded in the past, that does not have to be our experience moving forward. So I am encouraged to see so many parents, students and community members are here today joining us, because we are all a part of the same team. Your voices matter. This is what I also want to say to you. When we talk about how we will convince other people who may not have experienced all that is good and great in our school district of Philadelphia, how do we convince them that our school district is of value and that we are of value? We have to let them know that, as my grandmother would often tell me, education is the great equalizer. It is the one tool that I don't care about whatever your race, your sex, your class, your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter what any of that is. When you get access to the opportunity to receive a quality education in a safe environment, it gives you the opportunity to pursue whatever it is that you have a burning passion for, your particular life, in this world. And so it's our great equalizer. And when you're figuring out whether or not you can balance time to live your everyday lives versus you're having time, to build the advocacy, the letter writing, the email campaigns, the small group meetings that it will take to help to move this along, I want you to continue to remember that education is our great equalizer. We have to do better. Why do we have to do better? Because we can't expect for every student to succeed if we don't invest in them equitably. It's like, I used to run track, right? Which is probably why these recreation centers and athletic associations and little leagues are so dear to my heart. But when you run a track is 400 meters. That's the length of a track. And if you wanted me to run 400 meters, but you start somebody else at the 300-meter line and they only have 100 meters to go, but I have to start at the starting line, you've given them a 300-meter advance ahead of me in the race of life. And that is important for us to understand. How can you expect me to perform at a level that will, give me all the tools that I need to compete in this global economy, in this global environment, in our global society, when you haven't given me everything that I needed in order to survive? So with that being said, I just want to strongly motivate, inspire, and encourage our parents to don't give up. I want to encourage you all, particularly when people often talk about everything that they can think of that is imperfect about our district. Philadelphia students, don't you allow anybody to throw shade on the school district of Philadelphia shine. Remember, Shirelle Parker said that to you. Don't you allow anyone to throw shade on Philadelphia's shine and our school district in particular. We do that by getting all of our allies together, the friends and the family, to speak up and speak out. And guess what? During this budget process, and give, Governor Wolf, Senator Hughes, and all of the other advocates, McClinton, Harris, and all of those who are leading the effort to fund public education, you tell them and everyone else that we thank them for making the funding of public education the #1 priority in this budget. The #1 priority in this budget to fund public education, because it is our great equalizer. I thank you so very much. Aside from working on Wi-Fi at these recreation centers, particularly here in Philly, we need to get some air. It is sweltering in here, but I wasn't going to miss this opportunity to come in here today to join each of you, and it is such an honor and a privilege to be with you. Andrea, I hope I didn't go in and out.
You were amazing.
Sound choppy. I'm sorry.
Let me tell you, Soror, Shirelle, right now, I feel like I can do anything. You have inspired, you have motivated me, you have inspired and motivated the people that are on here. And again, I know every student hears your message and they know that you value them, you care about them, you're advocating for them, and you have our back. And let me just say this, you said your grandmother said it. I came from a household with a mommy and a daddy. It wasn't where you going to college, it was which one are you going to, because education is the equalizer, especially for Black folks and everybody else. You cannot take that away from me. And so I come from a very well educated family throughout both sides of my family, because you cannot take it. It allows those individuals to exceed, to understand. And so we have to make sure that that happens. And I thank you for your support, because I am one of the biggest supporters of Dr. Height. He knows so. I have his back. That is one of the toughest jobs. No one is ever happy with you. Which one is it today? Is it the parents? Is it the students? Is it the board? Who is not happy with you? And so despite those challenges, he continues every day to fight for these students, and he loves and cares about them. And so we will always continue to support him. So thank you.
Hey, Andrea, I didn't notice this, but I've got to give a shout out. I didn't realize that the 5-county area was in the room. A big shout out to Chester, to Delco, to Montco, the 5-county area, us getting together. We are the nucleus. We're stronger when we're advocating together. And Andrea, thank you for sharing what my grandmother said too, right? Yes. If there is one thing that no one can take away from you, it's what you get here. And that the most important computer or muscle that you have, and it's that which is in between the ears. So Tomio and Thomas, it's good to see you all, and to all of the parents and all of the students who are on. Thank you all so very much. And whatever you do, don't give up. It's the great equalizer, and it matters. And you will, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, you won't get weary in this fight, because every time you get tired of moving forward and advocating for that which you should naturally give, you will immediately become invigorated. Why? Because it is what you deserve as human beings. This is your civil right. It's your human right as a citizen in our city and in our nation, and of course here in our Commonwealth, that you get access to a quality public education, and each and every one of us deserves it. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go throw out this football, okay? Not football, this baseball.
Go have fun and get some air. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Thomas, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Great. So at this time, we want to hear from you all as attendees, as students, as parents, as advocates. We want to hear you let us know what are the issues that you are seeing in your schools. How can we as advocates better support the issues that you have? How can we better fight and better champion you all and represent you as we engage with our legislators? And also, how can we motivate you all to join us in this fight? So what's going to happen now, we've assigned individuals into breakout rooms. We tried our best to assign people in advance. So as you can see, you should be able to add yourself to a room if you haven't been assigned. We have identified areas that we believe a good number of people are in. So we have the Northeast Pennsylvania region. We have the Southwestern area of Pennsylvania. We have a couple of rooms that are Philadelphia. We do have a room for Bucks County and those near Bucks County. We have a room for Montgomery County and those near Montgomery County. And then we finally have a room for Delaware County and those that are near Delaware County. So, you know, the power of Zoom, just give me 1 second. We're going to launch these breakout rooms. You're going to spend time, about 30 minutes. We have moderators in the room that will walk you through this project. And once again, if you're not in a room, you can join one of the rooms yourself. Some of you right now that are in not assigned a breakout room, you should be able to join a room.
Where do we go to do that?
You should be able to click on the button where it has breakout, and then you should be able to see a button that says breakout, which should allow you to jump into a room.
I'm sorry, I'm on my cell phone, I have limited buttons here. I'll try to keep looking.
If not, you can stay in this room because we will do our session in here. Okay. So just give me 1 second. I just want to make sure everyone is in their room, and then we will begin our room here.
I don't think anybody sees the button that you're referring to.
Okay. Well, for everyone here, we can stay in this room. Let me see if we can make that work. So give me 1 second. So at this time, I just put a link in the chat. Let me know if you can see that link. If you can see that link, I see folks joining in this room now.
Yeah, we see the link.
Okay, great. I see folks jumping in the room. So while this is listed as Delco, this is going to be broader to everyone. So just we want to hear from all of you. So this is a tool called Jamboard. What it does is it allows you to actually chime in with your comments. So if you see to the left, there's an option called sticky note. It looks like a square with a couple of lines there. When we start, you can actually click on that and answer your question. So for instance, question 1, what concerns you and your friends have regarding education in your district? You can click on it. And as you can see, I just put something that says more money. So now all of you should be able to see that. And I want to hear from you all. Begin to type in, what are some of the issues that you guys are seeing in your schools? And I have Rainey here that will be assisting with us. Are you guys seeing that it's more issues? And if you're having trouble with this, you can also shout out your answers and I can write it in. Are you all finding that the issue is the outdated facilities? Are you finding that you need more teachers? Do you feel that is just more funding overall? What are some things that are, and don't feel that it has to be a very broad issue. If there's something very particular to you, a specific problem, we want to be able to hear from you as well. Are you all able to see? Great. So we see one answer. Great answers are coming in. So hopefully, glad to see that these tools are working. So standardized resources for equal quantity and quality, right? We do recognize that the resources across the Commonwealth are not as consistent. So that's important. Children not learning or not being taught accurately. I think that's something that we think about when we think about teaching and how do we support our teachers. More money, great. Meaningful legislation for charter reform. While people are writing, anyone want to chime in with some of their thoughts as to what are some of the concerns you guys are having?
This is Ed Brown. I'm a school board director and president in Upper Darby School District. And I put the comment about,
I wish we were able to do this in person, but with the news of half of Pennsylvania adults being vaccinated, I'm confident that we're well on our way to being in these events in person so that we can continue to do what we love to do, which is to build relationships. I'm a former educator. I taught for 10 years at LaSalle University. So it's wonderful to be with you. Listening to stories of your work reminds me of why I do the work. Because how we nurture our students, how we nurture our children will determine not just their future, but mine and yours as well. After 6 years in the state legislature, and now 3, I'm in my 3rd year in Congress, I can say that I'm going to advocate following the passage of legislation that we advocated for. It's important to advocate in advance of legislation, but then equally as important to advocate afterwards. And what am I talking about? The American Rescue Plan. It is transformative legislation. I'm proud to have been a small part of it and have had the chance to vote for it. The American Rescue Plan brings Pennsylvania schools nearly $5 billion. Nationally, it's $130 billion from ARP. That is transformative. It will help us reopen schools safely while prioritizing the needs of social, emotional, and mental health, as well as the academic needs of students hardest hit by this pandemic. And this funding will go to critical summer programs, after school programs, extended learning and enrichment programs, programs that we have long said we need consistently for our children, not just for the kids, but for the parents as well. Combined with the child tax credit that will cut child poverty in half, the American Rescue Plan is a generationally transformative piece of legislation that meets this moment of a devastating pandemic and an economic collapse. And this legislation was only possible because of advocates like PCCY and all of you in this Zoom. And I mean that sincerely. The American Rescue Plan is an important start. Now the president's proposed American Families Plan and Americans Jobs Plan are also overdue generational investments in our infrastructure, also in early childhood, providing universal high quality preschool. Permanent funding for universal quality preschool is essential for our children and our families, for our workforce, frankly. Families should not be spending 40% more than the tuition at Temple University for childcare. And we can pass the American Families Plan with your continued advocacy and work. That's exactly what I came to Congress to do, to pass transformative legislation that lifts up the many, not the few. So whatever I think of advocacy, whenever I think of advocacy, I want to tell you the words I always think of. When you think it seems impossible, that you won't be able to get the job done, that you can't be dogged or squeaky enough, Remember what Abraham Lincoln said. He said, public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, almost nothing can succeed. So please continue to do the work you do. Please continue to be dogged for the things you believe in, like equitable, excellent education funding. And again, I thank you for the chance to join you today, PCCY, Urban League, and all of the advocates in the room. It's really my honor.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us, Congresswoman Dean.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
We also we want to recognize and bring up to the stage State Senator Lindsey Williams. As Congresswoman Dean mentioned, we have this federal fight, and then we have the fight back in Harrisburg. And we recognize that there are opportunities of synergy between what's happening in Harrisburg and then what's happening in Washington, D.C. So we really appreciate the work that State Senator Lindsey Williams is doing to ensure that our schools are funded.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. As said, I'm Senator Lindsey Williams, and I represent the 38th district in Pennsylvania, which includes a piece of the city of Pittsburgh, as well as large portions of the city's northern suburbs and the Allegheny River Valley. I also have the pleasure to serve as the minority chair of the Senate Education Committee. I want to thank PCCY and Urban League for inviting me here to speak to you all today, not just about education funding, but how important advocacy is in the education sphere. You're all here today because you or someone close to you had an experience that made you want to make things better. Maybe it's your neighbor who couldn't find high quality pre-K for their little ones while they worked and ended up maybe losing their job. Maybe it's your teacher friend who tells heartbreaking stories about having to spend their own money on supplies for their classroom. Maybe it's your child who needs education supports that you have to fight every day to get for your child. Maybe it's you. I'm so excited to see so many students here today, ready to speak up about their experiences. One of the things that I've made a priority as minority chair of the Education Committee is to include student voices and perspectives in our discussions. Students are the ultimate stakeholders, and too often we're only hearing from adults. And I always learn something when I talk to students. It's probably the favorite part of my job. We need your voices, so thank you for being here. But whatever experience is that brought you here, you have a story to tell. And that story is valuable, especially when it comes to education policy. As Congresswoman Dean said, we have an unprecedented opportunity in front of us right now with the American Rescue Plan. We're getting billions of dollars from the federal government, and we need to spend it in a way that is an investment for all of Pennsylvanians. That means we need to make education funding from quality pre-K through higher education a top priority. And we need to do more than make this a one-time investment that makes up for losses sustained by COVID. We need to make sure that we're spending this in a way that's sustainable and reliable and sets us up for future success. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the best ways to talk to your legislators. My office recently did a series, a demystifying Harrisburg series, and we did a session on how to talk to your legislators. So if you want more information, my website, senatorlindseywilliams.com, has the recording, and I'll drop that link in the chat when I'm done. But I'm going to talk about just a couple of the things we talked about during that event. Everything from kind of the least personal way to interact with your legislators to the most personal way, and maybe a little bit about how effective they are. So those one-click advocacy emails that are organized through a group are a great way for a large group of people to express an opinion. We get them in my office. I count them all. We have a tally at the end of the week of how many we've got on a particular topic. But if it's an impersonal email, you'll probably get an impersonal response. So we write individual responses to every campaign, but we don't respond to each person individually. But if you take the extra step to take that one-click email and add something a little bit more personal about your personal story, why you wanted to send that email, especially when you're talking about legislation that I might be less familiar with or something that you're really passionate about, these emails are really effective. Those are the ones that get flagged that I read. I've taken some of them and I've asked for permission. I've read some of them on the Senate floor because they are that moving and that impactful. A personal email will just helps to get through the noise a little bit. When you're calling and speaking with legislative staff, that's also an option. You can call and express your opinion on a topic or bill and ask the staffer that answers the phone how their boss feels about that piece of legislation, and whether they know how the member is going to vote on that particular topic. You can also always ask for a meeting with your legislator or their staff member to talk about legislation where you could tell that personal story in person. And it's also great for small groups experience, like get a couple parents together, get a couple students together. I literally had one last night. I ended my Friday. It was the best way to end a Friday. I had a small group meeting with 4 or 5 students from a local district, and it was fantastic. But remember when you're meeting or talking to your legislator to come with an ask. What do you want him or her to do? Do you want them to sign on to a piece of legislation? Do you want them to vote a particular way? Do you want them to come to an event that you're having to learn more? Make sure you tell them what you want them to do. You also might want to talk to the chairs of the standing committee that advance your legislation to the floor. So for education in Pennsylvania, that's Senator Scott Martin and myself. And in the House, that's Representative Curtis Sunny and Rep. Mark Longjetti. Under the Pennsylvania rules, majority chairs determine what legislation gets a hearing. So don't hesitate to reach out to members of a party that you may not belong to. Both sides are important. And then remember that your legislators and their staff are just people. Some may seem unapproachable, but you have the experience and the knowledge that they need in order to make the right decisions for the people of Pennsylvania. So please don't be afraid to engage with them, to engage with me. If you need help, if you haven't done it before, bring a friend. There's strength in numbers, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Williams. And I really want to say thank you, because you actually led me into the next portion of our presentation today. So as you can see in the chat, we have a call to action where we can give you the opportunity to send your legislator an email to let them know that they need to fund our schools. So as Senator Williams suggested, feel free to take this template, make a few edits so that it's personal to you, and send it out to your legislator. But then we also encourage you to let others know about this, so you can feel free to take that link and share it with your friends and family. So if you look in the chat, that link is going to show up there. We want you to take a quick 30 seconds and click on that link and contact your legislator. And like I said, if you have a message that you want to tailor, you may want to take a few minutes after this meeting to contact your legislator. And I mean, to tailor that message and then contact your legislator. And this phone to action, once again, the emails are critical because, as Senator Williams mentioned, legislators count how many times they get contacted on this issue. And for legislators, you know, they do count to determine, is this issue enough that if I vote incorrectly, I may lose my job? And that's one of the factors that they're really paying attention to. So as they see the momentum on an issue start to snowball, that kind of puts pressure on them to take a stance one way or another. So that's one of the reasons why it's really critical to get in touch with your legislators, whether it's using phone to action or using an email contact. If you have the ability to go to Harrisburg or go to their local office, I know for many offices, they have to keep track of every time someone comes into their office to talk to them about whatever issue that they're focused on. So it's really critical that you recognize the tools that legislators pay attention to as it regards to advocacy. So hopefully you all were able to take a few minutes and contact your legislator at this point, and then also use the hashtag Fund PA Public Schools to let your friends and family know to contact their legislators. Another way to get involved in this fight is to write a letter to the editor. And you may be asking yourself, what is a letter to the editor? Let's see if I can share my screen real quick. Hopefully you all can see that. How to write a letter to the editor. So every legislative office subscribes to all local newspapers in their districts. So a letter to the editor or an op-ed will be read by a staff or your lawmaker. Your neighbors and other allies are likely to read these letters in the newspaper. These outlets, as well as the websites, create public awareness. So as you can imagine, you read your newspapers, you read an online newspaper, and you see people, everyday citizens, sharing their thoughts, right? I know many of us share our thoughts on social media. We use Instagram to share our thoughts, but letters to the editor is another tool to share your thoughts. But we feel that it's a strong tool because we know legislators pay attention to what's in the newspaper. Legislators pay attention when their name is tagged in a story. Once again, they keep track of that because they want to get a sense as to what are the issues that are critical in their community. So we encourage you to consider joining us in this letter campaign. So what we will do in the links, so you'll see in the chats in a few minutes, we have links to different newspaper outlets that you can actually contact and find the journalist in that that focuses on education for that newspaper, so that you can contact those individuals. We also would encourage you to sign up to write letters to the editor. We have a new campaign that you will see in our chat. I'll put the link. We just started a new campaign where we want to have you join us and become a team of PA Schoolworks letter writer ambassadors, so that whenever we need letters to the editor, we can go to you and bring you into the game. So if you would take a quick 30 seconds, fill out the link in the chat and join us in becoming a letter to the editor ambassador, so that when it's time to let the community worldwide know about what's happening, how you're feeling, how they can support whatever your champion, that we can count on you to be an ambassador. So wait a quick 30 seconds. Once again, we have sample letters to the editors. We'll put in the chat as well, so that this doesn't have to be difficult. I know sometimes people may assume that letters to the editors is a difficult task because you're not sure of word count, you're not sure if it will be read. But we at PA Schoolworks have tools that you can leverage to assist you. And once again, I'm putting in the chat a list of the media outlets. So hopefully you've been taking a few minutes to sign up. Great point, Sandra. Groups of students can join together to write letters so their voices can be heard collectively. That's something that's very critical. This letter doesn't have to be a one-person show. You could take a group of students and say, we are the students of Norristown High School, or we are the students of Reading High School, and we are writing to demand that our legislators fund our schools adequately and equitably. So it doesn't have to be a one-person show. So feel free to mobilize your friends and family to come together and use these tools to advocate. And our organization is here to help you. As I said, you see the links there. We're able to help you craft your letter. We're able to help you frame your thoughts. So don't feel that you're in this fight alone. Great. Now we also know in this day, we all are in front of our phones. We know that we use Facebook and Twitter to convey a message. So we also know that legislators pay attention to social media. We know that legislators want to engage with their audience. They want to use social media to tell their followers of all the great work that they're doing. But once again, they pay attention to when they're tagged. They pay attention to certain hashtags because they want to get a sense as to what are people saying about me, or what are people saying about important issues. So social media is a great tool, particularly for younger people, but everyone, right? We know Facebook is used by everyone, young and old, and Twitter as well, to engage our legislators. So we want you to take a few seconds and retweet from our PA Schoolworks page that you were in attendance here today and that you agree with our message to fight for our schools. So we just put the Twitter chat, the Twitter link in our in the chat, and I will put the Facebook. And while you're doing that, please make sure to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter. It's a great way to stay informed on the work that we're doing. It's a great way to understand, get more of an understanding of the issue. For some of you, if you're new to this fight, you may feel a bit overwhelmed with all the great information that we shared today. So you may want to digest all this information and take a step back. But social media and following us on Facebook and Twitter is a great way to just begin to enter this fight, right? By following us on social media, you'll learn more about the issue, you'll learn more about the stories. From there, you may decide, I'm ready to get more involved. And with that, I now want to contact my legislator because I want them to know that I'm more involved in this fight. And from there, you may decide, I'm really ready to get involved. I've followed on social media, I've made tweets, I've contacted my legislator. I now want to put my name on a letter to the editor because I want the record and the whole newspaper world or the whole Commonwealth to see that I am in this fight. So as you can tell, there's different ways for you to be involved. And as always, we'll make sure to email you all these links after the meeting so that you have the opportunity to contact your legislators and take advantage of these tools whenever you're ready. So if you're not ready today, you can think about it tomorrow and then join us in this fight. So like I said, do not feel that you can't be involved. And more importantly, we want you to leverage these tools so that you can share it with your friends, because ultimately we know that this fight is going to take more than just us in this room. It's going to take everyone across the Commonwealth. And it's going to take people that are in communities that are not always heard, communities that can really influence legislators to understand that if they are not as supportive with the need to fund our schools, then that means that those legislators need to be pushed. And so that means we need to mobilize people to identify those legislators and more importantly, find the people that live in that legislative district and mobilize and empower those individuals to get into this fight, to recognize that they have a say, to recognize that their schools are not being adequately funded, and that it's on them to ensure that they put the pressure on the legislator to do the right thing. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tamia, who will close us out.
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you so much for all of everyone who's on the call today, all of the legislators who've taken time out of their very busy schedules to encourage folks to really engage in ongoing advocacy for education. We can't say thank you enough to all of you for continuing to do this hard work. We encourage you not only to keep participating on webinars like this or in your communities, but to really get engaged in PA School's work. We'll send you the information about that and how to get engaged. And for parents and community members who have been fighting this battle for decades in some cases, we hear you, we acknowledge you, and we are fighting with you. And for students and new advocates who have just recently become active, We encourage you to fight on. We have been encouraged by you and want to hear your voices. So please do engage with us again. In closing, there's so much work that we have to do in order to get to the point where education is adequately and equitably funded. You've heard a few ways as to how to do this, and you've heard from some very strong supporters and staunch advocates how they get it done, and that they need to continue to hear your voices. What we know is that there are other voices that are not as impassioned and as focused as the ones that you've heard here, and that it takes a collective effort in order for them to hear us and to act and vote in such a way that, in fact, education is more adequately funded. We need to keep the pressure on those people as well. So keep engaging in your advocacy, but get 5 friends to also do the same. Let those friends come from various regions across the state and encourage them to put pressure on their legislators and their communities to get engaged and act as well. So with that, I thank you for coming out this morning and for into the early afternoon. Encourage you to stay active and connected with us. To members of the press, please do reach out to any of us with any questions or concerns. And to all of you, all I can say again is thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you in advocacy. This is a PA Schools Work event. Happy to have this statewide coalition. Glad to offer this platform to all of you. Have a wonderful afternoon.